So this is going to be the basics of how to do a recrystallization, and it's just a general procedure, but we use it quite frequently. So to do a recrystallization, what you're going to need is you're going to need your crystals in a beaker, something that has a wide opening so that you can kind of access it. Once you've done the recrystallization, you can do the filtration and get your crystals out. You're going to need the solvent that you're going to use for the recrystallization. You're going to get the solvent in a Erlenmeyer, typically a small one, not too much larger than the volume that you need. You don't want a big wide Erlenmeyer because that will increase the amount of vaporization and it will evaporate away before you get done. You want it to put a boiling stone in the solvent before you start to heat it, before it gets to a boil, and then you want to get it up to a low boil. So you don't want it to be a roaring boil, you don't want things to be shooting out, you just need it to be a low boil. And what you're going to do once you've gotten it to a boil, you're going to use a pipette and you're going to transfer out the solvent, the hot solvent, about 1 milliliter at a time. You're going to add it and then you're going to swirl and you're going to put that back onto the hot plate with the crystals for just a moment to get it hot again, because the goal here is to get the solids to dissolve in the hot solvent. And once you've done the transfer, it cools off, so you need to get it warm again before you can decide whether or not you have enough solvent in there. And so the key is add as little solvent as possible to dissolve your crystals, and to do that you need the solvent to be warm. And when I add it 1 milliliter at a time. And you might ask, well, how do I know what a milliliter is? It's about as much as you can draw up. One pipette bulb full is about a milliliter. So that's what I do. I add it, I put it into the with the crystals, and I put that back on the hot plate, and I swirl it for just a few seconds, maybe 10 or 15 seconds, just get it to warm again till I start to see it begin to bubble, so I know it's about at boiling. If there's still solids in there, then I do this again, 1 milliliter at a time, a little at a time. And I swirl it down the sides, because what's going to happen as you do this is that some of that solid is going to recrystallize on the sides of the beaker, and you want to get that dissolved down in there. So I'm heating it back to almost boiling, so I start to see it bubble just a little. Take it off quickly, let it cool just a touch because you don't want it to be too warm, and then you add another milliliter, and I keep doing that a little at a time, until I get all of the solids dissolved in the hot solvent. Okay, if you add all of the solvent, you can of course dissolve the solids away, and I think I've done it. I think I've gotten all of the solids to dissolve, so all the solids are gone in the warm solvent, and that means I'm done. So I turn off the heat on the other solvent, I take this off, I let it cool to room temperature before I put it down into an ice bath. So I'm going to take it, put it in an ice bath, and what's going to happen quickly is the solids are going to come back out once it's in an ice bath. In fact, if I hold it here long enough, they'll come back out just at room temperature most likely. So I put it in an ice bath, and while it's cooling, I get my filtration apparatus set up so that I'm ready to do the filtration. And then I do my filtration to get my purified solids back. Alright, so that's a simple recrystallization procedure, and that's what you'll do anytime you need to do a recrystallization. The solvent will change depending on what the experiment you're doing, but the process itself remains consistent.